Good afternoon, everyone. All right. This is our last time convening together while we are here in Aspen, so I'm going to try that one more time. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. Thank you. So, the perfect way to end, actually, like I do at home with my 3-year-old, is to tell a story. So I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story about an opportunity I had to make new friends as part of expanding our work through the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative. So we took a delegation to South Africa, and thanks to our partners at Accenture, we were able to connect with an NGO there called the Southern Africa Youth Project. So this is an NGO that does work readiness training for young people. They do community development for the broader community, the township. They also do digital skills training and job placement. But what's important to know about this NGO is that it was founded by one of the most extraordinary leaders I have ever met, and actually believe I will ever meet in my career. This young man, this young entrepreneur's name is Neftali. Let me tell you about Neftali. So, Neftali decided that as he looked around his community, that the young people there were not gaining the critical computer skills that were necessary. He felt like the young people in his community were missing, were on the wrong side of the digital divide. And even though he himself didn't have the skills that he wanted to make sure he brought to his community, he decided that he would be self-taught. This young man found a computer. He went online and learned how to fix the computer. And once he fixed this computer, he began to self-certify in a broad range of IT courses. At the same time, this young man also began to build relationships. He began to do fundraising. He began to build local coalitions and local networks that ultimately led to the founding of the Southern Africa Youth Project. So now here we are, we're this delegation and we're visiting this NGO. And just like any of you who have done a site visit, this young man is putting on this very professional presentation, and he is talking about data. He is talking about the training programs. He's talking about coalition building. He's talking about fundraising and sustainability. Most importantly, this young man, while he is hosting all of us, is at the same time welcoming his brothers and his sisters from the community. And if I could leave you with this picture, the picture I want you to have in mind is this young man speaking to us and embracing his brother, kissing his brother, hugging his brother. You know that touch that you do when you are speaking to someone, but you want the person standing next to you to understand that you see them and you are connected to them? He is actively doing this while he is also telling us about the way he is changing data for the community in his township. We're watching Neftali, and what I was thinking to myself, I wasn't thinking about the training, the skills development, the data, the fundraising. I was thinking if I close my eyes right now, I could be in Chicago at the Re-Engagement Center. I could be in Boston at College Bound Dorchester. I could be in Hopi at the Community Foundation. I could be in Hartford at Our Piece of the Pie, talking to anyone from Bob to Hector or Chandra, the range of service leaders that love their community and do all of the work of running their organization and loving the community at the same time. So this story is a very important story to tell because it's a way in to this global work. You'll see, as you hear our panelists speak today, the interconnections of the work are so clear. But the thing that I think defines this, what we'll hear from our partners across the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative, is a deep commitment to relationships, to service leadership, to community and network building that is all grounded in principles of love. And that's how it connects fundamentally to this work. So it's a real honor now for me to welcome Jamie up here and to introduce the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative with you all. Thank you.
Wow, great to be here. The sun is shining. You're with us for another hour, hour and a half, and then you get to enjoy a little outdoors as it heats up outside. Thank you so much for staying with us It is my great pleasure to be talking with you today about the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative. And the way I want to start is I want to start with a thank you. A thanks to you all. We have built this initiative and designed it based on all the work that you have been doing for the many years in communities in the United States. That was in fact the inspiration that gave us the idea that we could build a similar community of champions, not for youth, but with youth, to advance opportunities in the global context. So it's because of all of you that we are here today. And I want to start by just asking everybody in the room who's part of the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative as a partner, either at the global level or in Kenya, Colombia, and India, the first 3 countries that we're working in. Could you just stand up so people can see? We've got about 15 people. Okay, they're all at one table here. And then, of course, some of my colleagues who are about to come up. But thank you all for joining, coming all the way from India, Kenya, 35-plus-hour flights. You know, this is a commitment here. It's great to have you part of this community. I also want to thank Prudential and Sarah Kay in particular, who was supposed to be up here with me for this panel but had to catch her flight back before the end of the session. And she was really sorry to miss this because she has been with us since the beginning, conceiving of this whole initiative, seeding the first research that was done to shape the Opportunity Youth Initiative globally, and then they have become the most important seed partner with a $5 million 5-year investment to help us establish the first communities, the first partnerships, and of course, advance economic opportunities and impact for young people around the world. So it's really because of them that we're here as well. I really want to give them a shout out, even though Sarah can't be here. Thank you. Yes, thanks, Steve. And the last thank you I want to say before I talk a little bit more about the initiative is to my colleagues at Aspen, Steve, Monique, the team here, who welcomed me in not as a domestic youth advocate, but as a global youth employment champion, and made the commitment to embed this and incubate and support this. And they have logged many thousands of miles with us to visit places like South Africa, Kenya, India. Poor Steve has to go to India next week after being on the road for 10 days already. So 10 years, yeah, 10 years as well. So thank you. And then I'd also like to thank the core design partners who have made this happen. So this is incubated at Aspen. It's supported by Prudential. But there are 3 other organizations that without whom we would not have this initiative today to introduce to you. They are Global Development Incubator, and Alice, if you could just stand up again to represent GDI. Global Development Incubator is a specialist firm in helping conceive multi-stakeholder global initiatives to really tackle the most difficult challenges in the world. And they have been with us since the very beginning, helping to design this initiative. So thank you, Alice and the team at GDI. Youth Build, we're going to hear from Tim Cross. Where's Tim? Tim's going to be up a little later. Youth Build needs no introduction to this group, but Youth Build International, you may not know, is operating in 23-plus countries outside the United States. And they have been at the table with us leading and building and designing the youth engagement, youth voice agenda. And without Youth Build, Tim and his team's leadership, we would not have that critical youth voice, youth co-design baked into the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative. So thanks, Tim, for your leadership and support. And our most, yes, thank you. And then Accenture is a more recent partner, but they have come in with all the firepower of a huge global company that cares about talent pathways for their employees and for young people in their communities around the world. And you'll hear from Lucy about their commitment to Skills to Succeed. But they've come in and provided teams and support to help our first communities build the strategies that will inform the work that we do with young leaders in those communities. And without them, we wouldn't have the kind of robust data and research capability that they brought in from the beginning. So thank you, Accenture. There we go. I always like to do the thank yous at the beginning because I'm one of these guys that always forgets then if I wait till the end. But it's also really important to acknowledge all the critical champions who've been at this with us since the beginning. So why should we care about Global Opportunity Youth? I mean, we've been talking for the last 2.5 days about all the challenges that still exist in this country to help work and support young people in their path and aspirations to a better future in this country. And there's clearly an answer that we shouldn't care, that we should close our borders, build walls, raise tariffs, and continue to pull inward. But I know this is not the community that believes in that, and we are not part of the group that believes that turning inward and putting up barriers is what is going to really solve the most difficult challenges of our time. And as Desmond Meade said yesterday, we are all God's children. We are not about just Americans, Canadians, Native Americans. We're about humans around the world. So when you think about the biggest problems that we face in the United States, they're the same problems that are faced around the world. Climate change is not an American problem, it's a global problem. Youth employment is not an American problem, it's a global problem. Immigration is not an American problem, it's a global challenge. So we conceive this Global Opportunity Initiative to recognize that we want to create openness, we want to create connections, we want to build a community with all of you and with partners around the world that share this idea that we are together trying to build a better future for the world. And let me just share a couple of facts that you may not know about the Global Youth Challenge. In Africa, in 2050, we are going to have 50% of the world's workforce. That's how fast the continent is growing, and that's how young Africa is. And we'll hear from some of our speakers today about some of the solutions and ideas that are trying to advance pathways for young people in Africa. India, this was such an amazing stat when I first heard it, when I went to India earlier this year to meet with potential partners. India's youth population is 350 million. That's bigger than the whole population of the United States. That's the youth population. The opportunity youth population, which we define broadly as young people between the ages of 15 and 29, it's a little bit of a broader definition internationally, include young people who are out of work and out of school, yes, but actually the vast majority of young people in that category are underemployed. They're working on very subsistence level wages, really just trying to earn a basic living to survive. That population is over 350 million. So this is a huge part of humanity that we have to get behind, work with, and figure out how we can support more effective pathways into a better future, into viable economic opportunity, and that's the inspiration for the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative. So before I invite our panelists on stage to talk a little bit more by region, we've got speakers who are representing Asia, Africa, and Latin America, the first three regions. I'll just say a few words about what the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative is currently doing. So we started last year. We announced this new initiative, but we hadn't actually set anything in place. And we spent a number of months visiting different countries to test the idea of a place-based, community and youth-driven systems approach to addressing youth employment, to see if it even resonated. Is this something that partners in Kenya, South Africa, India care about, see as a need? And the resounding message and response was yes. There's great innovation, there are great models, there are great interventions working in many of these places, but just as we see here in the United States, they're often fragmented, they're at a very small scale, they're disconnected from the government and business leaders who are in many ways making decisions that affect the lives of young people, but who don't involve young people and community leaders in those decisions. So the same issues that we face in the United States, we saw globally, and we had huge response and invitation from community partners to bring the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative to their country. And so we've landed on three first communities that we think represent critical geographies and regions. Pune, India, which is a city just outside of Mumbai, Mombasa, Kenya, in the east coast of Kenya, and Bogota, Colombia. And before the end of this year, we will likely add one or two more communities in Brazil and South Africa, and that will become the nucleus of what we hope will be a much broader network of communities that we'll build over the coming years. This is not being designed, as so many international development projects anyway are designed, on a 2-3 year project or initiative time cycle. We are designing this as a 10-year plus initiative. We believe, like you do, that the kinds of changes that we're imagining with our partners take time. It's about addressing systemic barriers that have been in place for years, so it's going to take years to overcome them. So we're making investments with our partners in these communities for 10 plus years, and we're shaping the objectives with our partners over those 10 years to also contribute to the global development goals, the social development goals that are now being shaped for 2030. So we also would like to see if our community partners can help shape and contribute to those goals. So that's the broad time frame, the first communities. And lastly, the thing I'd like to just leave with you before I invite the panelists is that part of our ambition, in addition to working with partners in these communities, to figure out how to bring together the systems actors, young people themselves, to co-create solutions that will break down barriers and provide much greater and accelerated pathways into jobs and economic opportunities, is to build a global movement and a community of learners who can together lift this issue up to global leaders and global policymakers. And this is why we're also so inspired by the movement building that you all have supported with Youth Here, the Opportunity Youth United network, the Opportunity Youth-led work that has been so critical to raising this issue at the federal level, the state and local level. And we have an ambition that together with your help, we can build a global network that will raise that kind of awareness, build that kind of momentum and movement to really shape a different future over the coming years. So that's the context that I wanted to set for everybody, give you a sense of the ambition, give you a really strong sense that we are really on the shoulders of the work that you have done. We're building on your experience and learning. Many of you have been advisors to us in this process, and we're so grateful for your interest and your championing of this Global Opportunity Youth Initiative and movement. But now I really want to invite my panelists up to have a conversation about what is going on in these different regions and why these partners care about Opportunity Youth and what they see as some of the most relevant and impactful solutions for these young people. So if you want to come on up, and I'll introduce you as you're coming up and getting mics. So we have first beside me, who's going to sit down, is Danielle Ricardo Uribe Parra, who's the Executive Director of Fundación Corona in Bogotá, Colombia. Danielle and Fundación Corona have been working on issues related to youth employment and pathways from education to employment for many years. And when we met them in the first visit to Bogotá, it was very obvious that they were the natural organization to host and incubate this effort in Bogotá. And it's been such a great pleasure to work with Danielle and his team. Next to Danielle is Santosh Ramdos, the principal of the Skoll Foundation, but for a number of years he was also at the Dell Foundation in India, and he was critical to supporting our first trip to India and exploring how we might get established in India. And he was also an important thought partner at the very beginning when we convened a global group of funders and experts to help us think about how we might conceive of a global youth employment, youth opportunity initiative. So welcome, Santosh. It's great to have you with us. Lucy, I mentioned earlier, Lucy Murdoch from Accenture. She's a managing director, and Accenture has this huge, ambitious Global Skills to Succeed program that we're very pleased to be partnering with, and look forward to hearing from her from the perspective of a large multinational employer, as well as their commitment to social change in the communities where their employees and businesses work. And then finally, really pleased, one of the number of colleagues who've come from Kenya on that 35-plus hour voyage, Ndungu Kahiu, is the executive director of CAPYE, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about CAPYE. But we went to Kenya about a year and a half ago, one of our very first visits, and one of our very first site visits was to visit CAPYE, who'd been recommended by a number of different partners, and really showed in an afternoon why they were considered one of the standout youth employment, youth opportunity models in Kenya. And now they're embarking on a very ambitious scale-up of their model and program with the Kenyan national TVET system, which he'll talk about. So welcome to all of you, and now I'll sit down and we'll have a discussion. Great. So, yeah.
It's working.
Thank you, guys. All right, so we wanted to, I think, start with you, Danielle. And I mentioned Fundación Corona, but it would be great if you could say a little bit more about Fundación Corona's commitment to Opportunity Youth in Colombia, and a little bit about the context, not only of Colombia, but of Latin America in terms of the Opportunity Youth population, and why you think this is an important population to focus on, to work with, and how it might contribute to a better community, a better society in Colombia, but also in Bogotá, where you live.
Okay, thank you, Jamie, and good afternoon to everyone. Grateful to be here and to be part of this great community of practitioners. I would like to start sharing a little bit more about what is happening in Latin America, because these last days, what I have seen here in the discussions about democracy, well, Latin America is also going through a difficult moment, I think, that there is a lot of countries that are going to extreme left or extreme right, and there's actually a lack of trust to the institutions. There is a lot of issues on young engagement and active citizenship. So I think it's very relevant what has been discussed over these 2 days. And in LATAM, when we're talking about the amount of population, it will be over 150 million young people. And from those 150 million, there is more than 50% in poverty. So the inequality, inequity issues in LATAM are very, very serious. And from those, there is almost 20% that are disconnected and could be a potential opportunity youth. So there is a region that is needing a change, different way of working. So I think opportunity youth and the approach that has been discussing here could be very, very relevant for the region. When we go to Colombia, well, I think Colombia is passing through a very, very relevant moment. We are now, after the peace agreement, moving and changing our history. And now we are also going through an important moment because of Venezuelan migration. There will be over 2 million Venezuelans coming to Colombia at the end of this year, so that's 5% of our population, the second biggest migration after Syria. So there is a lot of things going on in the region. And we think these kind of programs and approaches are a huge opportunity to change things, change the things the way they have been working. In Bogota, the city that has been selected through the collaborative and through Global Opportunity Youth Initiative. Just for you to know, Bogota is a city around 7.5 million people, and more or less 2.5 million are young population, but Opportunity Youth will be more than 500,000 people. So the scale of what is needed in Colombia is huge. So we need to address it in a much more systemic approach. And we need to engage the young population to participate. We were very happy to share that 2 days ago, when we were here on Sunday, we had local elections. It's the first time we have a woman mayor that is actually promoting the diversity within the participation and engagement of young population. So we're very, very happy about the momentum. And when we think about how Fundación Corona has been working, these topics, just to share you a little bit more about Corona Foundation. So Corona Foundation is a family-based foundation. We have been working over half a century in social development issues in Colombia. We focus on main 2 areas, education to employment and citizenship engagement. So are very, very aligned to what we have been discussing with Opportunity Youth here. But the way we have been working has been a systemic approach, gathering different organizations. We consider ourselves as a learning organization. So we promote learning, we have different kind of interventions, we make partnerships, but over a long time we have been working mainly top-down. And it was since we started talking with you to understand the need to have the youth voice within the programs when we consider youth, displaced population, immigrants from Venezuela, coming together to see what we're trying to plan within the cities and within our kind of interventions, that we see that there is a huge opportunity to change, the way things have been working in Colombia. So just to summarize, I would say there are 3 main things that I think are key for Colombia and to Bogota within the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative. One is the first time that there is a 10-year kind of initiative looking into the long-term period to move the needle on Opportunity Youth. And that's game changer. I don't know, most of the programs in Colombia for the government yearly based programs. So this is actually a game changer. Second, I would say that the youth voice coming into the table, coming into the discussions, prioritizing what their needs are, is totally different. And third, being able to be part of this community, as you mentioned, Jamie, the SDGs, trying to discussion at the global level, it will be very, very relevant because as we have seen on the previous presentation yesterday, when we share a little bit more about our communities, we are sharing the same problems. We're sharing the same situations. We're sharing the same barriers at a systemic level. So it will be very, very important to continue learning from the community and also adding knowledge from what we can support from Bogota to the network.
Great, great. Thanks, Daniel. I think we'll keep moving, then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A. So Santosh, I mentioned in the intro that you spent a number of years in India at Dell working on issues related to youth employment in India, and now are at Skoll, and I'll let you kind of make some of the links to the work you're doing at Skoll now. But I guess what I was hoping you would start with is just give us a sense of the Indian context and why this is such an important issue for India and what you've learned over the years of working on different approaches, different kinds of interventions for young people, and anything you can link, obviously, to why you think this kind of place-based systems approach working with young people is something different in the Indian ecosystem.
Sure. Thank you, Jamie. Just before I start talking about India, as Jamie mentioned, I actually live in the US. My family and I moved here 6 months ago. I've lived in India most of my life and was raised there. So I'm a new immigrant here. And I've been to a few conferences and like gatherings of impact leaders. But I've just been struck by the way this space is set up and the number of inclusive voices that are not just included for the sake of it, but how those voices are coming with the confidence and that they are the ones that are kind of setting the agenda. And I think having these spaces for minorities and people of color is really incredibly important. And I was just like really moved to see this, and I hope OYF continues to do this in the coming years. I just want to acknowledge that. It's incredible for me to be here. Yeah, so speaking of India, I can just highlight some numbers to start off with, and I think this might bore you with percentages, but just bear with me for a couple of minutes. It is the largest youth population in the world. We might be the largest labor market in the world too. And predominantly young people who are coming into the labor market. Some estimates say that there are about 8 million people every year, young people entering the labor market into the context. And there's abundance of jobs. Wherever you go, people will be like, we have more jobs than we have people, we can hire folks. But then on the other end, if you look at an important indicator, which is labor force participation rate, because I think the employment data in India is very truncated, mostly because it's lots of informal employment, so we don't have formal systems like we have in the US to track employment. The labor force participation rate in India is actually less than 50%, and it's been the lowest it's been in 45 years. In comparison, China's labor force participation is 75%, and the US is actually 63%, although the US has a substantially older population. So that's an early signal of something fundamentally that's going wrong. And you add that to the other layer of structural inequities that young people have faced in India for a long time. And it's very similar to race in the United States. We've had our own sense of racism, which is called the caste system. And the caste system actually designates people for certain jobs early on once they're born, which means that it's a skill development program, but it's kind of designed to truncate people into buckets, which is, if you think of young people and having agency, it's not a great thing. And then there's been significant amount of gender inequity. So the female labor force participation rate is actually 23%, which is one of the lowest in the world. The countries that do worse than India are probably in the Middle East, where there are like religious constraints in terms of women going into workforce, right? So it's actually a pretty scary story, even though at the surface it looks like the economy is growing and there are jobs available. And this was the context where, as Jamie mentioned, I used to work for the Dell Foundation as part of their practice that did philanthropy and impact investing focused on jobs. For many years, starting in the late 2000s, Dell, like many other philanthropies, started doing work around employment, focusing on employment training and training providers, TVETs, and those kinds of things. And in about 2015, 2016, we took a step back and we realized that things weren't really changing. Young people were not staying in jobs. We would train them and place them, our partners would train and place them, and they would leave in 3 months. And it was an intriguing challenge where, there are lots of markets where there are no jobs exist, and South Africa is a good example, and a few other places. That wasn't the problem in India. There's markets where jobs exist and people exist, and you can't match them. It's called frictional unemployment. That was typically not a problem in some cases. But the jobs themselves were really, really horrible, right? That's the fundamental challenge that we found. Young people were not happy in those jobs, and they were starting to exercise something called agency. They were starting to say that our lives matter. We're not going to put ourselves through something which is a dead end where the wage growth or it doesn't pay me a living wage, and it also doesn't really enable me to build a career. So there were lots of jobs, there were no careers. And then when we started looking at solving this problem, and I'll tell you where my hope comes from, there are 2 areas where we could tackle it. Traditionally policy, where you enact policy which is focused on minimum wage laws, better working conditions for workers. And there is opportunity to do that, but in India in particular, which is a high growth oriented economy, they didn't want to create more red tape, so they were not keen to doing that. And then you positively engage with employers. You started seeing them as not just folks who are creating ill, but could be a force for positive good, right? So that's the opportunity that I saw increasingly in some of these markets. And I'll just end with a quick story, drawing inspiration from Monique. I have a 4-year-old. So when we got obsessed with employers, I used to spend a lot of time with lots of employers in India. And not with the CEOs type, but mostly the hiring managers and the HR managers. So I was one day sitting at a fast-growing food delivery startup, These were folks that were hiring incredible number of entry-level folks. And so I was sitting in their office in Bombay, and they were hiring Mumbai, and they were hiring about 100 people a day. So I was sitting with the HR manager, and I said, I really want to know how you hire people, and how you're thinking about tracking them, and what kind of opportunities you have, and how you're sourcing these candidates. And the person looked at me and said, do you want to really know how I hire people? Just walk with me to the next room. So I walked in with that person to the next room, and there was a waiting area. There was about 40 young people waiting there, opportunity youth, who were waiting for that first job. And I was like, well, how did these folks turn up? And I asked them, and they all picked out their phone and showed me an app called Work India. And they're like, we heard about this job. This app told us to turn up here, and this is how we came here. And they kind of looked at me like stupid, saying I didn't know what Work India was, which is interesting, because folks who do employment work, right? We've been steeped in this, but we still don't know. And at that point, that app actually had 1 million active users in the city of Bombay alone. And that told me that there was something really powerful that's happening where you can leverage the markets as a solution for change. This app had taken away the amount of time that a young person took to find a job. It usually took them between 3 and 6 months to find their first job. This app could get them a job in between 3 and 6 days, right? Think about the economic impact of that. It also had a rating system where you could basically rank employers. So young people were just swiping across organizations that they didn't want to work for, and they were exercising agency, right? And it was a really powerful message to me. And I just want to end with saying that there were like 3 things I took away from that conversation, right? One is, I think there's something about designing appropriate technology and keeping users in mind. This particular example, they designed an app which was less than 3 MB in download because data speeds are really slow and these phones are really not great. They're Android phones, but they work really well. So how do you design products? But they also had a person in their team who was an opportunity youth person who tested every single feature on that app. They made sure that everything that went out was very user-centric. The second one was really aligning incentives with employers. I don't think we can work in this piece without getting that right and engaging employers, but also making sure employers see financial benefit out of all this and getting them to pay for it is the second. And the last, I think, is the most powerful and thing that I think care about, which can get this right, is around agency. And so I used to hang out with young people doing focus groups using the app. And I would see a lot of people just swiping. And I would be like, well, why are you not clicking on and showing interest on this job and go for an interview? And they would just keep swiping, and they're like, no, I'm not looking for a job. I'm just like curious on what's out there. Because I can learn more. I want to see what jobs pay what and how far it is. And here it is, right? There were 400 new jobs added on this app every day, and it was all like 2-mile radius from them. But they were still learning about it. And if you think about it, that's how we operate in the world. It's just that they've always been told that this is what you should do, and right here they are exercising agency on what they could do, right? That's the power of me. And that's where the markets are playing a positive force. So I am optimistic, and I do want to say that the power of bringing these actors together and creating a systems-level play is the power of this. I know the Pune City Connect, which is an Indian-based organization that's doing this, is a great job. GOE's agenda is around this. So
and could you just say, since we don't have Pune City Connect up here, we have a colleague, Bobby, who's here from PCC.
Yeah.
Could you just say a word, because you actually introduced us to Pune City Connect, and it was one of the, in fact, still the only organization that we found in our international travels that was already trying to model a place-based collaborative approach to addressing issues related to youth livelihoods and a couple of other critical social change issues in Pune. Can you just say a word about why you think that's a kind of a particularly interesting model for India?
Yeah, so I see this working, getting the right, in a complex labor market, which is the example here in the US, and so it is in India, getting the actors, it's not one system, it's multiple systems working in conjunction, and at some way you have to imagine the young person at the middle of this. So getting these actors to convene together is a hard challenge. Pune City Connect had magically done this. I don't know how, but they had started off working with the local city government to start setting up these training centers. And then suddenly they had like a huge number of employers, but also like leaders in the business community come and be partners in this. And then they also had training providers be a partner in this. And they'd created that single user experience for young people. And that to me is the power of an organization. And I think today they train about 8,000 people with an aspiration to train a lot more. And those are the emerging models where we can leverage the power of the different systems to work together to get this right.
Excellent, yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Santosh. Lucy, give it, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lucy, you bring the perspective from Accenture that has had over a decade, I think, of working on these issues related to skilling for jobs, particularly with more vulnerable populations, including opportunity youth and other workers whose jobs are at risk of being automated away or in other situations of vulnerability in terms of jobs. It'd be great if you could sort of share a little bit from a global employer. I think 500,000 employees globally?
Close to, yeah.
So you've got quite a significant platform as an employer, as well as this commitment to investing in the most effective skilling pathways for young people. It'd be great if you could kind of give your perspective as an employer and in terms of how you think this kind of an approach that brings together business leadership, government, and youth at the center could be a difference maker in certain countries and communities.
Sure. Well, hello everyone. I'm delighted and humbled to be here. I'm Lucy Murdoch. I'm Managing Director for Global Corporate Citizenship Delivery, which basically means that I oversee the community impact work that we do globally in Accenture. And actually one of the joys of being here is that when I've said that to people, people have actually understood what that meant, because usually when I try to explain it in the big wide world, nobody has a clue what I'm talking about. So as Jamie said, I've been asked to bring the kind of big corporations perspective, and so that's what I'm going to try and do. But to start, I'd like to tell you a story. Storytelling is obviously a big thing.
Everybody went to that storytelling session or
I think they did.
practice, right?
But this is not actually my story. This is a story that I heard when I was on a field visit in Argentina, and it's the story of the boss of the Accenture business in Argentina. And he went to a jail to visit the jail, and he talked to some of the inmates. And before he left, a young inmate looked at him and raised his hand and looked at him straight in the eye, and he said, "Are you the boss around here?" And he sort of went, well, I guess yes. And he said, "When I leave here, are you going to give me a job?" And in that moment, the boss of the Argentinian business knew what he had to do. And I think that businesses and business leaders around the world are having these moments increasingly, and that they realize that they have a critical role to play in fixing the big issues that exist in society. So a little bit about Accenture and what we do. For anyone that doesn't know, we're a large global professional services organization. We cover a broad range of services like Dell. Strategy, consulting, digital, technology, operations. Our clients are all the big businesses you've ever heard of, whether it's oil and gas companies, governments, banks, travel companies, manufacturers. In fact, we work with over 6,000 big companies in over 120 different countries. We have close to 500,000 employees, and that number literally goes up every month. So if there's one thing to say about Accenture, it is that it is truly a global organization and a very large employer of people, including young people. As Jamie said, we've had over a 10-year commitment, a philanthropic commitment to youth skilling. Our Skills to Succeed program has focused on getting disadvantaged young people into jobs or starting businesses. And we have a publicly stated goal that we will equip 3 million young people with the skills to get a job or start a business by 2020. The observant amongst you will notice it's almost 2020, but I'm not allowed to say anything because marketing will kill me. But I'll leave you to ponder on that. But to bring this to life, I have a few examples of the types of things that we do. And I tell you these things not to kind of boast about how great Accenture is. It's more to let people understand that I think the diversity of things you can expect or ask for from big corporations. So, I mean, the first thing is that we do provide money, cash, and we've partnered with big global organizations around the world like Save the Children and Plan International to run skilling programs for young people. In the US, we have partnerships with organizations that have probably been here, Year Up, Junior Achievement, and I've actually met several people who have also been involved in our local US partnerships. And so in the kind of funding space, we've been involved in, or we've supported the skilling of hundreds of thousands of people in the past decade. But some of the other things that I thought it would be interesting to call out, we have some technology assets that we make available to our nonprofit partners. One of them is called the Skills to Succeed Academy, and it was basically designed with youth in London, and it provides employability and soft skill training, and that's now used with multiple NGO partners in 6 different countries, including the US. And we've skilled almost 200,000 people with that. And I guess the other thing I'd say about that is it's actually available in every job centre in the UK. So if you go into a job centre, which is where you go if you're unemployed, you have that technology available to you. It's a technical training platform, basically. A couple of other things. So we provide pro bono and technology and consulting services. One of my pet projects at the moment is that we're building an entrepreneur application with a small NGO in Oakland in California. Basically, it's called Sky's the Limit. The organization is called Sky's the Limit. And it's a mobile-first application that provides training material, so how do you run finances and accounting, that kind of thing for young entrepreneurs. But equally importantly, or probably more importantly, it provides a mentor match to get people that critical mentoring, and it also provides seed funding. So we have a thing called a Friends and Family Grant, which runs on blockchain, in case if anybody's interested. But it basically provides access to that friends and family sort of seed funding that so many disadvantaged young people don't have access to. And we have over 12,000 people on that platform, and we're just in the process of rolling it out in some other countries too, Nigeria and the Caribbean, as kind of a pilot as to whether it could be rolled further. And of course, consulting pro bono, that's what we're doing with GOYI, and particularly around the kind of the research, the strategy, and then the design thinking. Yes, I'm immensely proud of all of these things, but I just wanted to kind of show the sort of, I guess, the different range of things that big corporates can bring. So in terms of challenges and opportunities, the pace of change is very fast, as everyone's aware. One of the biggest sort of challenges facing young people is the types of skills they need to be successful in our new economy. There's a WEF statistic, which I particularly like because it applies to my daughter, but it says that for kids that started school 2 years ago, which is when my daughter started school, that 65% would go on to do jobs that haven't been invented yet. And so, what is it that we need to give, what skills is it that kids need in order to be successful? And I think that is very much one of the challenges it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity and something that a big corporate like us can help with. But a further responsibility I see or a further opportunity I see is in a trend towards what we know as being a responsible business. And I think that is basically the bringing together of what has historically been big corporations' kind of philanthropy with basically what they do day to day. And I think the sort of distance between that is starting to get closer and closer. In August of this year, the Business Roundtable issued a statement of purpose, which was signed by 181 CEOs, including our CEO, which basically committed to leading their companies for the benefit of customers, employees, suppliers, communities, as well as shareholders. And I think what we're seeing is the next wave of corporate social responsibility or corporate citizenship, where it's not just about philanthropy, it's about the entire way that you do business. And so I think that that's a serious opportunity that we should all be able to take advantage of. One illustration for Accenture around that is the way that we recruit people, and that has changed quite significantly over the past few years. So if you'd looked, a few years ago, probably everyone would have been from a very similar background. They'd have had a 4-year college degree, but that really isn't the case now. And again, we're really starting to focus on how we can be a responsible business in that way. And we now recruit from a far broader sort of section of society. A couple of sort of illustrations, I guess, just to bring that to life. We have a program called Programa Start in Latin America, and that is basically operational in Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico. And it's where we partner with NGOs in those locations. We provide the technical skilling, the NGOs provide the soft skilling, and then we basically recruit as many as we can into our organization, and we use the network of businesses that we have that operate in that area to recruit other people into those jobs. And in the past few years, we have recruited over 500 people from what in many cases are slum backgrounds into those jobs. The other thing that I'd call out in this space, and it has been talked about a little bit already here, is apprenticeships. So again, this idea that everyone that comes into a big technology company may not have a 4-year degree. So there's a big focus in the US, and by the end of this year, we should have trained over 450 apprenticeships. So those are people that did not start out with a college degree. And those programs, I think that's something that's actually more prevalent in Europe, but we have apprenticeship programs all over Europe and in various other different countries. So hopefully that brings to life a little bit about the corporate perspective. The final thing I'd say is just how delighted we are to be involved in GOYI, and I just wanted to call out a few things that I think are particularly important. The first is the sort of user-centric design. We would talk about customer centricity in a business context, but actually the idea that the youth is at the heart of everything really resonates with us. Strong cross-sector collaboration, strong global collaboration, and you could argue that Accenture's whole business is built on global collaboration. We strongly believe in being data-driven, and we're also delighted to be able to use our skills in pro bono consulting because it allows us to bring our people into this kind of purpose-led work. So in summary, we believe that there are many challenges and opportunities. Change presented by the changes in technology today, we think business has a critical role to play in skilling for employment, both from a philanthropic standpoint, but also from being a responsible business. And we're delighted to be able to partner with GOYI on these important things.
Thanks, Lucy. That's terrific. Thank you. And before I turn to Ndungu, I do want to highlight one thing that you touched on. There are a lot of similarities, but there are also some big differences, obviously, with the opportunity youth population outside the United States. And one is that, unlike in the United States, where education still equals opportunity in most places, and there are lots of things that we've talked about over the course of the last 2 days of how we have to improve the education system to realize that vision. But basically, if you continue your education, the data clearly shows that the higher you go in the education system, the more chance of a sustainable and better income. That is not the case in most places around the world. In fact, in some places, the higher you're educated, the more likely you'll be unemployed for lots of different reasons. So education no longer equals opportunity in many places. And so hearing employers and others who are trying to figure out how do we move away from these built-in structural blocks that you won't hire somebody without a BA, you won't hire somebody without X number of years of experience, you won't hire somebody without a high school degree, but instead start to really figure out what are the skills and competencies that young people could quickly gain without necessarily going through the traditional education path, I think is a really critical, I know it's a theme here at this conference, but it's even a bigger issue that we're looking at globally. So thanks for raising that, Lucy. Ndungu, really thrilled to have you with us. Ndungu hosted us, as I mentioned, our very first country visit to Kenya. When I was asking various folks about who we should visit to see a standout youth employment model that was trying to bridge the gap between education and work, everybody said, you've got to go talk to CAPIE. They have built a really special, impactful model that's working with literally tens of thousands of young people in Kenya and has ambitions to go to much greater scale. So, Ndungu, thank you for joining us, and we'd really love to hear a little bit more about CAPIE and your commitment to working with Opportunity Youth in their pathway to a viable economic opportunity.
Thank you very much, Jamie. I'm very honored to be here and also for being part of the GOI initiative, which we have been for the last 1 year now. We're very excited. My name is Ndungu Kahehu. I am the Executive Director of CAP Youth Empowerment Institute. We call it CAPIE in short. CAPIE is an NGO with a very simple mandate, which is to support opportunity youth to access opportunities for earning a living, to transition from a state of hopelessness to one where they can take care of themselves and take care of their families. And by the way, thank you very much for this term, opportunity youth. We have been calling them vulnerable young people. And I promise you from today that we will stop doing that, because yes, they may be vulnerable, but they are really an opportunity. And in Kenya, they are a big opportunity, but also a big challenge. Kenya has a population of about 40 million people, and 60% of them are young people. And one of the singular biggest problem that the country faces today is youth unemployment. Depending on the numbers you look at, it's anything from 26% all the way to 40%. And that's before you even consider underemployment, which is a whole other issue again. Some people, and I agree with them, call it an existential problem. You can relate almost every problem from insecurity, terrorism, crime to that problem. And if it's not solved, there is a very, very big question as to whether Kenya can survive as it is now. It has to be solved. And so that's where we came in. The model we use was not developed in Kenya. It was actually developed in India, but it has been adapted and applied and changed in over 10 different countries of the world, Kenya being just the latest of it. And it works in a very, very simple way. I consider it as two understandings. We try very hard to understand opportunity youth. We try very hard to understand young people. We talk to them all the time. And before we started working in Kenya in 2011, we had spent 1 year going all over the country talking to young people, trying to find out what keeps them awake at night, what's their biggest concerns, what's the problem they have, what their hopes are, what their potential is. And so that's how we came to the conclusion that supporting young people to access opportunities to earn a living is important. Then the other side, the other understanding is trying to understand employers. And again, we spend a lot of time trying to understand employers. And in fact, those two understandings are built into our model. We have, for example, today, a network of 2,500 employers and mentors who support young people by providing them skills, but also by sharing their experience with them, by holding their hand, and by offering them opportunities for internships, for jobs, or for markets. We have been able to, over the last 8 years, train over 57,000 young people, both directly and indirectly. And because, thanks mostly to those two understandings, we have achieved a very high transition rate, a very high success rate. The transition rate, for example, from what we call from learning to earning is over 80%, 75% for jobs only. In a country where unemployment is a problem, where there are not many jobs to be had, by exploiting this market mismatch of skills offered by the existing system, skills demanded by employers. And about another 10% are able to establish micro businesses. We are trying to grow that for a very important reason, that as we have grown, we have also come to the limits of this model. There are some places in Kenya where no matter what skills you have, there's no job to be had, unless you are willing to move. And luckily, many youth in Kenya are willing to move, some very long distances, some across borders. But that's not all young people who can move, and especially young women are not able to move for many reasons. So we, after working for 8 years, becoming perhaps one of the biggest skills providers in the country, we decided to break all that and change it. Because we realized that we are not even scratching the surface. Yes, we are providing we are helping about 10,000 young people directly every year and about another 10,000 indirectly every year. But every year, the statistics we have show that close to 500,000 young people in Kenya transition from either the primary education system or the secondary education system and disappear. They don't go forward with their learning. They don't go for any training. And it is assumed they go for jobs, but really they don't have the skills for those jobs. Nobody knows what happens to them. And unfortunately, the government hasn't really cared very much about them until recently. So we decided we are going to try to change that. And early this year, in March actually, we made a decision that beginning next year, we are going to focus mostly on training people who offer skills to do what we do. We have been testing this all the way back from 2014, and we think that we have an opportunity to succeed. We are targeting the government because it's the biggest skills provider in the country, with over 2,000 institutions with a capacity to train 2.1 million people each year. But guess what? We train less than 150,000. In fact, in 2016, Kenya was enrolling more young people in colleges, in universities, than in the skills training institutions. So that's the challenge that, Jimmy, I believe you are mentioning. We have set ourselves that we are going to work with the government first, and then later maybe with the other private skills providers. And we are going to offer them our model, our tools, our support, and we are going to challenge them to try to achieve the same outcomes that we do. Probably they won't be able to get to that 80% success rate, but if they get 60%, that's really, really, really good. Because consider that we will be talking of not 10,000 reached, but 2 million reached, maybe more in the future. We expect that it's going to be a very difficult thing to do. We have actually been warned that we should not do it. And unfortunately, I never learned to listen, and I have a team. I have a young team, actually, a young team of staff who think like me, and we have decided we are going to try to do it. And that's probably why I was so excited last year when we got the opportunity to be part of the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative. Because we realized that to do this, it can't remain direct delivery, it can't remain Kenya only, it can't be an organization doing something. It has to be a collaboration of not just organizations, but individuals, not just Kenyans, but globally. And my being here the last 2 days have shown me that that I was right. One of the things that have really, really struck me is how common our problems are, the issues we deal with, how common the aspirations of young people are, by the way, and the potential they have, actually, is the same. Youth unemployment, Jimmy, you're right, is the same everywhere, but also how committed different people from the US, from all kinds of sectors, all kinds of backgrounds, deciding we are going to try to resolve this issue together, how far they can go. And my hope is that Kenya will be part of that now bigger network, not looking at the problem as a country problem, but a global problem, and that the GOI will be maybe an opportunity to create that opportunity for young people in Kenya to feel they are part of a global family that is addressing the same issue.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you, Mindy. We welcome you. I think we've got a few minutes for some Q&A, if anybody wants to offer one, and I also have a few questions I'd love to follow up with the panel. Steve's always got a question there. That's good.
I'm always asking questions, sorry. I'm curious, it was great to hear a little bit of the takeaways from being here, but I'm curious if there were any moments of learning that struck each of you that you might bring back to your current work. Some of you back on the ground, some of you in global context, some of you somewhere between India and the Bay Area. So I'd just be curious, one, any takeaways that might translate into the work you all do? And then second, anything you think we're not thinking about in the US that we better start thinking about? I was struck, especially on our trip to Kenya, just how far along so many of the programs, the pathways, you all being Exhibit A of a great pathway at scale. And you know, even the digital divide program we visited in Kenya, I walked around saying, man, these guys are blowing year up out of the water, you know? And so it's fascinating. And so one, what do you?
I hope not Europe's out of the room.
Well, and I don't know offense to Europe's awesome. I just think there's great stuff.
Yeah, there is.
No offense to Europe, my bad. But one, anything you're taking back to, anything you want us to take back to our communities?
All right, I could, maybe I can start?
Yes, please.
Yes, there are many things I have learned in the past couple of days being here. The biggest one being this feeling of kinship, that we are actually trying to deal with the same issues the same way. But probably one of the things I have learned is that for us to be able to do this scale up, to achieve this transformation, there's a price to pay. There's some, you call it what, quid pro quo? We have to give up. Sorry.
That has a very special meaning in the United States right now.
So for example, we have become successful by insisting on certain benchmarks of performance and training our staff. We spend a lot of time training them to achieve them. When we go to scale, we have to give up some of that. We have to give up sometimes quality for quantity, because this is the time we have to, if we don't do anything for the large numbers, then even the few that we are helping won't make a big difference. That's probably one of the biggest. The other one is that the organization that we have created, that we have had to become in order to achieve what we have achieved now, will probably change in a radical way, in a big, big way. The first thing is we have been happy that we have this 9-step model, self-sufficient, we get results, and we have been laterally expanding. So we start with one center, we are now at 45. But when you want to reach 1 million young people, that won't do. It means that you have also, again, to give up direct delivery and in favor of third-party delivery, meaning you have to trust someone else to do the things that you would have wanted to do. And believe me, it's very difficult to give up that. It's really, really hard because we think we know it all. It's that one of the things I've learned here is we don't. We don't know it all. And then the question you said, is there something the US can learn from Kenya? Yes, I believe there are. Let me give you an example of something we have been doing in the Eastern African community. We have been using Rwanda as a laboratory for new things. And I know a lot of governments, people don't recognize that, but that's what we have actually been doing. When we want to see something work, because Rwanda is small enough, that something that would probably take in Kenya 1 year just to get consensus can be done quicker. Plus also their government system actually allows for it. We can be the same. We have actually been already. For example, the take-up of digital money transfer, the famous M-Pesa, worked in Kenya, I believe, because it's small enough. And now it's being taken up in much, much bigger economies like Nigeria and Ethiopia and in other parts of the world. I believe that there is a real benefit to partnering with smaller organizations and countries overseas.
Thank you. Other responses to the question about what you might take home, what you've learned that's relevant for the work globally?
I'm happy to go. Yeah, so I mean, I work for the Skoll Foundation now. We're in the business of supporting social entrepreneurs, creating systemic large-scale impact. And I think there's 2 key takeaways for me. One is, we kind of think of us as sector agnostic, and partly because we know that solutions in the real world are not sector specific. I thought I knew that lesson, but I was really surprised, but also blown away by the level at which this movement has participated in furthering democracy and strengthening underlying institutions around justice in the United States. And I didn't expect coming in that was part of what the power of this community is going to be. And that's a big lesson for me, even for us who think about cross-sectorally, that there are ways in which engaging young people can have underlying strong effects that are foundational to the future of this country and wherever we work. The second one is we do a big convening every year, and we are big on convenings. And we've not been very successful in creating inclusive spaces. And I was just talking to Steve during lunch saying that there's a huge learning personally for me on how can we create a space like this where all voices matter and all what.
It's a follow-up to that.
Go ahead,
because,
Jimmy.
what's up?
Hello, thank you. It's an honor to meet you all. Thank you. Jamel Alexander, work with the Forum family. It is what it is. I actually, myself and LaShawn was a part of the emerging leaders when it first started with the Skoll Foundation. So the fact that you're here has been an honor. And the fact that my sister supervisor, and even Big Brother Steve, in a way where I appreciate the relationship and the stewardship that they built over time, because that was literally an issue that we actually had when we went. But then on the flip side, my question is, how do you all listen to your young people as you all go to scale, and what's some of the implementation? Because one thing I'm even realizing, even as we grow and we've kind of started this movement together, there's avenues that we are still learning from. And the fact that even when listening to the young people in Philadelphia when they first came to the global initiative, whether it be in India, and the one sister was talking about how religion plays a huge factor as far as suppressing them. But then even on the flip side, being in Kenya, as far as like what's going on in Rwanda, like how do you incorporate and making sure you stay grounded with the young people and elevate, whether it be through intergenerational or just as far as like just being intentional so they can grow together.
And before you answer, I'll mention one thing, which is we're going to transition in just a couple of minutes to kind of the youth voice, youth engagement agenda of the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative, and invite Tim and a couple of young leaders to talk about that. But it's a great question. If anybody wants to just respond with a couple of thoughts about how you're engaging young people in the co-design process and listening and incorporating their perspective.
So for the GOIN collaborative, some of the members of KPA are actually part of the youth-led design. And I believe one of the reasons is because of what they have to offer, plus the interests that they are able to represent. But for KPA itself, like I said, what I called this understanding of young people is built into our model. For instance, before we do any training course, any technical course, we do a pre-market assessment. And that assessment includes not just talking to potential employers to find out who would hire the young people, but also to young people to find out what it is they need, what it is the kind of support they would want beyond the training. And then once we do that, after every batch, One batch lasts about 4 months. After every batch, we have what we call sector gatherings, where we bring together young people and the employer partners who either came for mentorship sessions, so they know each other already, or who supervised them when they were on internships, or who offered them a job, or who supported the business startups. And the idea is to find out from each of them what it is we can do better. And we have learned, in fact, that the biggest source of information has now been coming mostly from young people. Because they would tell us, you're training us in this, but we know that it's a bit outdated. Or when I went to the place you send me for internship, they don't use the machines that you use to train us, say, in building. They're using something different. And we continue to do that. We have now created what we call a youth alumni network of all young people who have left CAPIA. And we are hoping to keep that tool for the transformation, because we have come to believe that the most powerful motivation for us has been young people talking to young people and telling them, I was where you are and I am here now. Or I was having these problems, I have solved them this way, or I'm solving them this way. It's much, much stronger than me telling them that this will work. Believe me, I'm 50 years old, I know.
Thanks. Well, and it is really actually a great transition to our next part of this conversation. We really wanted to highlight the youth engagement, youth voice, youth agency part of the work that we're spearheading. And I'm going to invite Tim Cross to walk up. But can we give our panelists a round of applause? Thank you so much for the great perspectives from around the world. And Tim, why don't you come on up and we'll transition to the youth voice part of our presentation.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim Cross from Youth Build International, and also a proud and ever-learning member of the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative. It's great to be here today. For 20-plus years, I worked on youth issues in the United States, and so after 13 years of working internationally, it's just great to be in this kind of space with and hear about all the amazing work in the U.S. At least for me, I couldn't leave the first day of this gathering, especially the first morning, without a lot of reflection since then. I was moved at many levels by the testimony, the passion, the political analysis, the sense of the urgency that was expressed during especially the morning session. I wrote down a lot of quotes from that because a lot of important things were said for our work and our movement. And one of them in particular, I want to do justice to it, but it went roughly, youth must be at the center of the story of their own liberation. And there are many things to reflect on with this statement. One of the obvious ones is that we are all writing the chapters of our path for development, and we own those stories. And the chapters that have been written set the stage for the chapters that are going to be written. So we don't write a chapter and forget it. We write it and treat it as having the lessons and the guidance for the chapters that will be written. So that's one, very basic to human development. And the second reflection is, especially in the youth liberation space, is what does it call us to as adult allies in terms of work and engagement with young people as they're seeking that path to liberation. Because I do think it calls us to a few really critical things that require us as adults, if we're committed to this idea of youth liberation, to do things differently. So one is to be curious, hopeful, and non-judgmental listeners in dialogue with young people. Always open, always listening. That's an adult ally. Second, it requires us to put the call out to young people, a real call, to join the spaces where issues, decisions, and analysis are in play that will lead to conclusions that will shape the choices young people are able to make about their futures. So the call as adult allies. And third, it requires us to be creative builders, architects of channels for young people to find their way to be inspired to want to find and engage with, channels with information so they can participate authentically in decision making. But we as adult allies need to be about building those channels and making sure they're protected and sustained as we go forward. So I want us to keep that in mind as we now drop into this more detailed discussion with Jamil teed up about this commitment in the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative to youth voice. Because what I just described, we can use all the rhetoric we choose around youth voice. But if we as adult allies are not looking at our own behaviors and taking actions that respond to this idea of youth liberation, it's all rhetoric and it will remain rhetoric. And that's not what we're about here. I know this room and everyone who came together here for these 3 days are not about that, and certainly not the partners in the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative. So we took this first step around youth voice agenda. Get us to by inviting youth delegates, opportunity youth delegates from 12 countries who came together in Philadelphia last December to do a few things together collectively over a week. And man, it was compressed week. We worked across 6 language groups through the week. There were young people coming from long distances who struggled mightily even to get the necessary papers, time off from work, from families. We had one youth delegation who camped out on the U.S. Embassy in one country waiting for that visa to come through. So a lot of young people with a lived experience of challenge and struggle around finding youth livelihoods, all coming together for a week in Philadelphia. So we were trying to accomplish a few things that week. Number one is the global strategy of the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative was fluid at that moment. It was emerging. And we tactically invited young people at that moment, while it was still fluid, to have direct input to respond to what was emerging in terms of the global strategy, what was making sense to them, what were the blind spots, how did they translate what they were hearing as a global initiative into their very localized context. So that was one. 2 was to have young people, and young people did action research before they came about their own analysis of the challenge of youth employment, country by country. They brought that analysis to Philadelphia and started to share that as groups of young leaders across the network. So that basic ground setting for young people from radically different contexts coming together to talk about, here's our lived experience in our particular country. Third was this idea of relationship. And we have a vision in the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative, very much shared by everyone in this room, of building a global network of opportunity youth leaders. If you're going to build a network, it needs to be intentional. The bedrock of it is relationships and trust. And we built the agenda of the week around, as much as possible, again, working across culture and languages, to build that sense of shared purpose among the youth delegates that came together. And then last is we intentionally invited 20 plus mainly adult-led institutions in the world, corporates, funders, multilaterals, who are also looking at this global issue of youth unemployment to come together in dialogue with the youth delegates, to hear from each other, to kind of formulate responses together and see where we might take this forward. So that's what we aim to achieve during the week, and we made a short video of the week. So I don't know if we can people see the screen from where you're sitting? Okay, yeah. So let's have a look.
This very motivated youth from 12 countries of different parts of the planet coming in, giving their best ideas, sharing their insights, exchange of knowledge with each other.
It's a global crisis that we're facing. There's over 350 million young people who we call in the United States opportunity youth between the ages of 16 to 29 who are not in school, not working, or not formally employed.
إلها طبعا أساليب كثير كبيرة، فهي بتوقف مصادر رزق لدى الشباب، تحرمه كثير شغلات، طموحاته كثير، واحد طموحاته واقفة إنه على شغل عشان يجيب مصاري، فلما ما يكون بيشتغل ما يكون جاي فلوس توقف طموحه من مرة.
Experience and exposure to our youth to come to the United States and know that people from different countries face the same challenges and try to figure out how to solve these, not only in a small context, but in an international context.
Dijeron que íbamos a venir a hablar de los problemas del país. Pensé que, como todos los países, vamos a hablar de nuestros problemas y son diferentes. Y al venir aquí me di cuenta que todos tenemos los mismos problemas.
United States, the biggest thing, just like I touched on yesterday, is drugs, especially in West Virginia.
Not getting the right support.
Stigmatized mindset.
El problema, en mi experiencia, es que no hay trabajos para estudiantes de medio tiempo que nos permitan estudiar y trabajar.
Young people play a very pivotal role in deciding the future of development for themselves. The organization that I work for believes very much in giving young people the space, but at the same time, show them that we care about what they're saying and care about their opinions. And often when that happens, you can see young people really glow.
We're sort of like the bees, and we go to flowers to grab pollen and also leave a little bit of us behind.
It is in the bee's DNA to work, to go out and pollinate flowers, come back, build the hexagon, build the honeycomb, and build this community.
Que fue como un segundo hogar, porque yo tengo algo concreto que decirle a los jóvenes, y es que tenemos otro segundo hogar. Podemos contar con otro segundo hogar, que no estamos solos, que nuestras voces, tenemos alguna organización que nos está escuchando y quiere trabajar por nosotros.
Normally conferences looks like not look like this at the hype. The environment here is kind of very much natural. I find it very much like my family.
والله صبوا هالقهوة وزيدوها هيك واسقوها للنشا مع ظهور الخير. فهاي عادة من عاداتنا. أول إشي بنقدم له القهوة. فشكرا لكم حسستونا للبلاد.
Cuando estamos allá, los jóvenes es como que no tenemos una voz, pero al estar aquí me he dado cuenta que si somos un montón de jóvenes reunidos, o sea, tenemos poder de cambiar las cosas porque somos la mayoría.
We will go back with lessons learned and with new ideas that we will apply in our organizations.
I want everyone to take one hand for put it out in front of you. I say you fail. When you're hungry, everything is honey. The world is hungry for your leadership. The world is hungry for your vision. The world is starving for your energy. You are the honey of the world. You really are. You are the honey of the world.
So it gives you a little bit of a sense of the incredible energy, and I wish you all were there. It was an extraordinary week. And what we are doing now in the GOII in each of the 3 countries of focus is taking the basic principles of what happened in the Philadelphia convening into country-based convenings of opportunity youth. And that's occurring in Bogota. It has occurred, as you heard, possibly through the week in Mombasa already, and in Pune City already the first youth convening, more to follow. Basic ideas: young people with the lived experience of being marginalized, finding challenges to youth employment and youth livelihoods, coming together, as has been said multiple times up here, to be part of being must be their allies to shaping the solutions in each country. So a couple of things about the questions we're engaging on this Youth Voice agenda as we now work in country. First of all, we're finding there's a pattern to the planning in each country that has 4 basic phases. So there's the discovery phase of simply mapping the issue and the challenges. There's creating the actual place-based plans. There's the launch of the plans, and then there's ongoing implementation. There's 3 key stakeholder groups who are all part of this work. One is Accenture and GDI as the planning organizations supporting the anchor partners. They're the anchor partners working. There are other stakeholders, government, private sector, in each of the locations. And all 3 of those stakeholder groups are engaging this challenge of how do we bring young people into the planning process. So it does create necessary frictions, tensions. It raises questions in certain moments of adult-led planning processes that young people are going to raise and have to be engaged, so that the plans that emerge have that perspective of young people as fundamental to how they look going forward. The additional vision of this idea of a global opportunity youth network, again going from Philadelphia to the convenings, the youth advisory groups in each country, is that we are going to start in 2020, if we can pull it off, supporting youth delegations from one planning process in a geography, visiting their peers in other countries. That's one. 2 is there is a growing group of young leaders from the countries of focus emerging out of the anchor partners, who we're now bringing to global settings. So we had a group of young people in Washington at the Global Economic Opportunities Summit 2 to 3 weeks ago in DC. And there is this nascent, interesting, possible idea of a Global Opportunity Youth Summit that we thought about 3 years ago, and now the idea of it is becoming more possible in our minds. So that'll be an active part of the discussion going forward. So, okay, that's it, Youth Voice agenda on GOII. I'm going to give the stage over to a couple of young people. So, where are they? Okay. So, let's just get, yes. So, Shanice from Atlanta, come on up. Alfred from Mombasa. And so these guys are going to share between themselves a bunch of experiences they've had in terms of their leadership roles in each of their communities, what they have done, what the challenges they've seen, and where they hope to take it. So we're really happy to have them here with us today and part of this growing movement. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Yes. Awesome. So good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Shanice Turner, and I'm from Atlanta. I represent Year Up. I represent the Aspen Institute as a youth leader. I am a member as the United Way Community Action Team. I'm a program management consultant with Forum for Youth Investment. And with Opportunity Youth United, OYU, I am a training coordinator. Yeah, so it's really my pleasure to be able to talk to you about my experiences. So if you could look over here on the left, I'm a big family person. So I've been able to make families wherever I've been in this movement for the past 7 years. So I have a picture of my nephew. He turned 14 this year, and for his birthday, I took him to the Chicago Cubs. I live in Atlanta, so I went all the way to Chicago, not only for his graduation, but to present him this birthday gift of going to a baseball game and understanding as a Chicago inner city youth how it is not to have those experiences and exposure. I decided to do my due diligence, not only as his auntie, as his mentor. And over here to the right, he looks very similar to my nephew. This is George. He is my little brother from Haiti. And I decided to take him on for Hope for Haiti at my church, Ray of Hope, to give him an opportunity that a lot of people in his country doesn't have. I felt extremely connected to him because he looks very similar to my nephew. My nephew is also half Haitian, and he will be 19 on the 17th of November, and I'm excited to say that I will be seeing him on July 31st in 2020. So this is my family as well. This is my mom's side family on the left and the right. I'm very big on family, and wherever I go, I like to make sure that I pick upon an opponent. We have Miss Dorothy Stillman. She's a former CEO of Youth Build, and she works with Opportunities United. And we have my mom over here on the right with my sister and my nephew. So I not only have many hats, I wear the hat of being a guardian. Yes, a 27-year-old guardian. I go back every month to go make sure that my mom's okay. I'll be seeing her next week, and I can't wait to be able to show her all you guys pictures and lovely faces, and to share with her the adventures I'm able to take on with her and without her as well. So we have my Forum for Youth Investment family, and we have my Year Up family as well. This was 2 years ago at the OYN 6th Summit. I was able to host it and manage it as well with Thaddeus and Sada at the time. And with last year at our 8th Christmas Gala, we were able to serve over 300 of our Year Up alumni and inner city young people in Atlanta, Georgia. And we were able to have a committee, and this is our pictures. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Alfred Sigo. I come from Kenya, Mombasa, and I'm the founder and the CEO of One Youth Network, a youth network that is currently boosting of more than 2,000 members of young people from 3 sub-counties in Kenya. I was born and brought up in one of the largest informal settlements in Mombasa, in Quote, slum. And the informal settlements is a home to more than 20,000 people. One of the things that moved me actually as I was growing up is that within the slums, we never had amenities. We had issues of youth unemployment and extrajudicial killing, and we also had issues of drugs and substance abuse leading to HIV and AIDS. And one of the key points that led me to actually start doing this is because I lost somebody very special to me, my dad, through HIV. And while I was in class 4, that is grade 4 in the United States, I actually lost a classmate who was actually trying to procure abortion. And that one marked my journey towards ensuring that I make a difference. Because one of the things I always believe in is to be the change I want to see. So I'll take you through some of the photos. Sorry. Okay. Those are some of the photos of actually me doing some campaigns back at home. And as you can read in the first picture, break the silence and the violence. Why I did that is because within that slum, actually young people are getting killed through extrajudicial killing. And I decided that I will do something to stop that. And in the second picture, I was in the national TV actually talking to government and actually calling the government that these killings need to stop. The second picture is me actually doing community service in my community back home in one of the beach that we have grown to be living and doing lots of things. And I hope you can see I'm actually carrying a sack. And in that sack, there are plastic bottles that we as young people are actually doing recycling as a way of actually earning something from it. And in the second picture, those are just some of the young people that comes from the network that I come from. The third picture is at the Empowerment Center that I'll later on share with you. This used to be my house, but as at now, it is an open space for young people, and it has a photography studio, a music studio, an open space for ICT, and also an open space where young people can just come, discuss, and be able to learn and get things that they cannot get. This other one is community action. I hope you can see my faces in both pictures. So one of the things that I've always believed in is community action, having communities as numbers. Because when communities come together, we make a difference. So I believe that I cannot do it alone, but me together with other people within that community, when we come together, we do a call for action for the government to do something. And in the first and the second picture, those are some of the activities that we've done during International Youth Day to call for the government to have equal share for us young people. And as at now, because of the two and other activities that we did, we are having a draft of the National Youth Policy that is very soon going to be put into action. And as young people, we'll actually get our space. And the last picture, you can see we love art. So the first picture on that end, we did a shoot, a campaign within the community to bring back the Chuda Creek trees that had been cut down. And now the community was actually suffering from not benefiting from the creek, because the creek had been a source of food for that community through fish, through beekeeping and other things. And as at now, we've been able to replant more than half of the mangrove within that creek. Then the last picture is again call for action. When we stop the unlawful killing, we make the world a better place, because peace is our agenda. So one of the things that I believe in, we cannot have an ecosystem that can work for us as young people if we do not have peace. And if we keep on killing young people, then it means that they can easily be swayed into radicalization. Because as you all know, Mombasa has been one of the cities across the world that has been facing issues of radicalization. Our young people have actually been swayed into Somali to join the Al-Shabaab group, and I hope most of you know that. So for us, we believe that through doing this, we bring a difference. So we've been working closely with the police, we've been working closely with the county government, and also we've been working closely with the national government to ensure that young people are not killed. And as at now, I sit in the court users committee to ensure that the young people who are innocent are actually given a chance to go back into the community. And as a young person who has actually offered my open space, my house to young people, I've ensured that young people whom are actually being released from the police custody are given space to actually nurture their skills. And also, one of the things we believe in is talent and skills are things that when nurtured well, they can easily lead into a strong economic or employment opportunity for young people. Thank you.
So we're both social entrepreneurs. So what has inspired you to be a social entrepreneur in Kenya?
Well, one of the things that has inspired me is to make a difference. It's because I grew up in that community, seeing the poverty levels. Because in that community, it's called Bangladesh. Bangladesh, I know most of you believe is in India, but again, yes. But again, for us as a community, Bangladesh is that community that is in Mombasa. So as a young person, the reason why I've been inspired to get into this is because I lost my dad from AIDS, and I wanted to see and to ensure that not any other young person will pass through what I passed through. And I grew up in a very devastated way because I lived with my mother, and even before my dad died, he actually suffered for more than 5 years, and I had to take care of him throughout. So I really wanted to make a difference, and I really never wanted to see what happened to me happening to another young person.
I definitely understand being a caretaker myself. So you use art as a way to be able to mobilize your young people. What other ways have you been able to use art to empower them?
One of the things that we've been able to use art is universal. Art is something that the same art that is done in Kenya can be done in the United States. So for us, because we believe that most of our young people have low education levels, we decided that for those who have low education levels, we are going to give them an alternative. And the alternative for us has been art. And it's not that we propose to them, but again, it is something that we've been doing. And why are we actually using art? Because Mombasa is a tourism town. So we have very many hotels that can provide jobs for these young people who are talented, who can offer their talent as service to those hotels, so that by the end of the day, they get jobs and they uplift themselves. Number two, art for us is therapy.
Yes.
And we believe that through the therapy, then the community is healed. First of all, it heals the young people themselves. Then the second one, it heals even the audience. So for us, we believe that art is a therapy. Art can provide job employment. Art can also be a source of entertainment within that society. Socialist.
Yes.
I also have a question for you.
I would love to answer it.
So what has inspired you to do all these things that you're doing?
Knowing that when I'm growing up, being a young person, I didn't have the person who could be an auntie to me like how I was to my nephew, or to be able to show my mom love, or my mom being able to show me love, how I've been able to show her. And being able to, take what's the things that's been cultivated in me by the pictures of my family that you guys were able to see, and understand that love is just like art, it's universal. And to heal, to truly heal, and still have scars and wounds sometimes, you have to love and forgive. And being able to do that had really put me in my purpose and put me in this space right here, because I love to love. And I always wanted to help people. I never, ever, ever would have thought that this could be a career path for me, a pathway.
So, 5 years and indeed beyond, where do you see yourself?
Well, I really want to become an executive director. I really want, I will be finished my MBA, so I did get accepted to Northwestern University. Free from Europe. Thank you, Europe. And being able to use this, I have my own organization called She Needs Beats LLC. I want to be able to do more, to use that to fund people to do more artistic things. I do voice acting and acting, and those pathways are not really what people would think about or going into, especially the voice acting field. In Atlanta, we have Cartoon Network, and I've been able to be a couple of extra voices on that without an agent, just making my own pathway, being that loving person, the timely person, professional, and just doing that, been able to interconnect. But I believe you have a gift to give to Monique and Steve.
Yes. So all the way from Kenya, I brought this piece of art. That is actually, this is an art that has been done with some of the young people that we work with. So it's Alex who has done this, and specifically we brought it for Aspen as a Thanksgiving for giving me this opportunity. And one of my parting shots, and indeed beyond, I'm saying that I am always hoping that one of the things that have been driving us is not by the profits we make, but by the difference we make. And I'm glad to offer this from Pwani Youth to Aspen Institute.
Thank you.
And this is very rare for me. I'm speechless. Thank you. I don't know if Monique wants.
That's never happened.
And now there'll be a tug of war about who gets to put it. Well, on behalf of the team, we thank you. It's so terrific.
Thank you so much.
Yes. I'd like to invite both Monique and Steve back onto the stage.
We are committed to starting on time and ending on time, so we're going to do this in just a couple of minutes. Please, first of all, join me again in not only thanking Jamie and the entire global delegation that we got to hear from today, but especially these young, extraordinary leaders. As we close out the convening, I am struck by the two specific calls to action made across this network. We have been asked to reset our aspirations, and we have been called to do very specific work together. Now, whether our work guides our aspirations or our aspirations guide our work, I think that we can all agree that these two things are inextricably linked to achieving the outcomes we all seek. So to connect some of the themes across the plenaries, I want to first lift up the work we were called to do. First and foremost, we were called to remove barriers to a true, inclusive, equitable, and just democracy. We were called to build local coalitions of power, noting, as Rashad said, power is the ability to change rules. The other thing he said that we must ensure guides our daily work is that these rules are both visible and invisible. Because when we talk about the barriers our young people face, we know that they are hitting both of these things in their daily efforts to achieve opportunity. The other thing that both Rashad and Josh called us to do is to play our position. We must know and understand where it is that we are able to achieve the greatest impact and then double down on those efforts. And you see, Desmond reminded us of something that's very important to underline as we think about how to strategically play our position. Desmond reminded us that we must always be aware of whether we are the cow or the pig, whether we are making a contribution or a commitment. Hear me when I tell you, our young people are always making a commitment. And again, we have been called to reset our aspirations in this work. We were specifically called to reinvent and to remember. We were called to reinvent as we reset our aspirations of what a post-secondary ecosystem can look like. And we were specifically asked to reimagine a system where students, imagine this, students don't have to give up who they are to get a post-secondary education. And even in this last panel, we were reminded again, as it was called out this morning, that our post-secondary education must be competency-based so that young people get credit for the lived experiences that will help them accelerate attainment. Our brother Terry, the young man who got up and talked about founding Think, Make, Live, that brother has a PhD by my own measurement. What would it mean for all of our young people to be able to cash in on their life experiences in a way that accelerates their visions? And finally, we were called to remember. Ellie asked us to remember that we all join this movement to reclaim our humanity, to reclaim our love, and to reclaim our hope. So as I shared with you yesterday, and as Tim just reminded us of again a moment ago, we are rewriting the future, all of us together. We are rewriting our country's narrative and now a global narrative about racial equity, gender justice, cross-sector collaboration, and system change. Let us always remember to have hope and love guide our work together. Thank you.
So I just want to add some thank yous as well. First, thank you. What an amazing thing this Global Opportunity Youth Initiative is. Who knew, right? I mean, so really a shout out to the GOYI team, to Jamie, you guys, well done. And as long as we're doing shout outs, how about I just asked the Aspen Forum for Community Solutions team to stand one more time so we can acknowledge Yelena, Jamil, Sherry, Ken, Doug Wood, Suzanne. I hope I didn't miss any. The folks at CNAY who are partnering with us, just thank you all. Also, we really want to acknowledge Aspen Conference Services and the team here who's been so supportive. I've had a lot of people say like, wow, my flight was canceled, and then boom, there was a van, and then wow, now I'm in Aspen. And you know, those guys, they're maybe 5 hours later, but wow, I'm there. But Aspen Conference Services really raised their game, and they say to us every time, we will figure it out, and they did. So I want to acknowledge that. And you know, really want to recognize you all for sticking this out. I don't know if anybody told you, but the last folks in the room all get a grant from whatever funder is sitting near you. So I think I saw Annie Casey over here. No, I made that up. Thank you, JP Morgan Chase, for funding that table. No, seriously though. Seriously, Kevin Sheno's going to move from his table over to the JP Morgan Chase table. No, seriously, thank you guys for being with us through this tough weather. I am not going to do the whole metaphor of the Aspens. How many of you have heard me do the metaphor of the Aspens? If I do, Sherry Brady will get up and walk out before I'm done. But you will remember that when you look on the mountaintop up there, it's held up by the aspen stand that shares its roots. So I'm not doing the whole metaphor, Lily. I'm just doing that to the last part. But just remember that we share these roots, that metaphor stands for us as well, that we're keeping this connection. Now we have a better metaphor, thanks to our incredible speakers at lunch yesterday. So we also stand with you as both a cow and a chicken. Monique and I will figure out which one's the cow, which one's the chicken. I have a pretty good idea. We know we're not the ham. We're not on the front lines, but we're gonna always be with you in the omelet. And if you miss the lunch, you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. That's the new metaphor. That is the revolution, the ham and cheese omelet. Okay, sorry, I'm digressing. I just lastly. Just slightly more serious, you know, the Aspens do stand in solidarity. They do share roots. And this is a time for solidarity. I mean, this is a time for standing together. And it's also time for self-care. So I just want to encourage folks who are on the front lines, those of you who are the ham especially, but all of us, take care of yourselves, because this is a hard moment in this country. We heard from our global friends, it ain't so easy elsewhere. And it's a time to really move to action, as we encourage with especially the plenaries. But it's also not a time to lose sight of your own self-care. So know that we stand with you in solidarity as you move to action. And please do take care of yourselves as we get ready to come together next in the Bay Area with our 3 Bay Area, plus the folks who are really from the north, Del Norte, all hosting us in Cali.
Oakland, San Fran. Yes, and Santa Clara.
There you go, David. So we look forward to seeing you, but action and health. Be well, be safe, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.
We'll see you in May.
Thanks,
you,
everybody.
everyone.